team like Kyrie and KD, or the Lake Show with King James and AD. Wish I could match him up with the bad boys from the 80s, but no black and white, I need that in HD. HenDawgz.
Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy HenDawgz, and we back to it. You know how we do it. I watched an NBA game from every decade. My first part was 1950, 60, and 70. And I think this is going to be 80s and 90s. But before we get into it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We are on the way to 10K. Go ahead and like this video. If you like this video, go ahead and write something in the comments. Yeah, I told y'all I'm going to make this to 3 parts. Because this is like a 32-minute video overall. So I was like, let me just break it down into 3 parts. And I feel like y'all kind of was enjoying the first part. So I had, let me hurry and get this second part out. So let's get into it. I watched an NBA game from every decade. Let's get it.
Too much for the 76ers. The 80s were again dominated by the Celtics and Lakers, so now we go. Here we go. The decade for the 85 finals. The first
I reacted to this 1984 finals too, so if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. It was a super good, hard-fought series between the Lakers and the Celtics, so this is gonna kind of be like an extra part of that. So let's get to it.
The thing that stands out is there's now a 3-point line on the court. The Lakers even have 4 players spaced around it in this frame. Very different spacing from previous decades. But this freeze frame is actually very misleading. Neither team consistently spaced out to the 3-point line, even though it was now on the court. This shot was actually the only made 3-pointer in the entire game, and it came because the Celtics desperately started shooting threes at the end of the 4th quarter. Instead, spacing usually looked like this, with 2 big men occupying the blocks. On the entry into the post, Magic Johnson double teams, and just watch the Celtics positioning on the weak side, pretty much as if the 3-point line doesn't exist.
Even though they wasn't really shooting threes, I still feel like that 3-point line still allowed them to space out a little bit more. Like, look at this. Like, even right here, like even just this spacing right here, I feel like without that line, they would have started in a lot more. But because the line is there, not necessarily they're going to shoot it, but you kind of have to respect it. As a Lakers defender, like seeing Larry Bird out there, seeing Danny Ainge out there, like you have to respect it in the sense of like you have to go out there and guard it. Even though they might not shoot it, like you still got to guard it because that 3 points can add up. So I still feel like it helped. I still feel like the 3-point line helped spacing a lot, even though people wasn't shooting that much.
Entry into the post, Magic Johnson double teams, and just watch the Celtics positioning on the weak side.
He
pretty
just
much as if
shot.
the 3-point line doesn't exist. Even Larry Bird, one of the best shooters in NBA history, had little interest in taking open threes during this game. The Celtics offense centered around floppy action. 2 bigs would start out on the block, while 2 guards would start below them on the baseline, coming off screens set by the bigs. Bird made a living using those screens to get open for shots. On this play, he comes off the screen and misses the mid-range jumper, but here he uses the screen to pump fake and get all the way to
Tough.
And on this example, both Lakers defenders...
Shout out to the Bird gang, man. Where y'all at? I feel like I haven't shouted y'all out in a while. I feel like I haven't done too many Celtic/Bird videos. But if y'all here watching this, man, write something in the comments. Bird gang, Celtic gang. You know I appreciate y'all, man.
Defenders go to Bird, so Robert Parrish is left.
Gotta be ready, Chief. Gotta be ready, Chief.
The guards could also interact with each other and switch places on the baseline, adding another layer for the defense to react to. Here's an example of that. The guards switch and Bird is left alone in the paint. However, the majority of the time the Celtics ran floppy, they were looking to feed the post. Bird, or whichever player received the screen, would then look to get the ball inside to Parrish and Kevin McHale. Watch how the defender is fronting the post here, which sets up a lob right over the top into Parrish. On the other hand, the Lakers also played with 2 big men on the blocks, but their primary action was the cross screen. Early in the possession, the big on the strong side block would go set a screen for the big on the weak side block looking to get a paint touch.
One thing I've noticed too in the 80s, and I don't know if this was the overall consensus of the 80s or just the two best teams, because this is the Lakers and the Clippers, who was the two best teams in the 80s. So maybe it was just them, or maybe it might have been everybody. But yeah, the one thing I noticed is there was a lot of off-ball screening. There was a lot of screening trying to get other people open to score. I didn't see that too much in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The 50s, 60s, and 70s was more or less just get the ball and just dribble with your right hand, just try to get a shot up. In the 80s, like, no, we gonna go cross screen. We gonna, have Larry Bird come around with a bunch of different screens to get open. Like, it was all about getting your best players open into spots to where they feel like they could score. And that's still in today's game. Like, I think the 80s is where it started. And in the 2000s, 2022, like, that's where they kind of, I don't want to say perfected it, but do it even more. They see what worked in the 80s, and it's still translating in today's game.
The Lakers would flow right into that cross screen for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy as soon as the ball crossed half court. On this cross screen, watch how the Celtics defended. They double-team the post with the passer's man, completely sagging off of Magic.
Yeah, that's
Both
crazy.
teams played that sagging defense all game long. Instead of picking the ball up past the three-point line and pressuring it, the Celtics and Lakers dropped way back and dared the handler to take a shot. Because no offensive player had any interest in keeping the defense honest by taking a pull-up three, the strategy was an effective way to double-team the post. It created
I know this is going to be a little ruffling a few feathers, but y'all see how they was just guarding Magic down here? Like, they was just sagging off of them, just letting them score. Can you be labeled as the best point guard of all time, and that's how they guarded you? Like, that's crazy. They're not doing that to Steph, man. They're not doing that. But I don't know. I did say point guard, so I didn't say shooting guard. So I guess that doesn't really matter if they're sagging off of him, because he's a point guard. He's gonna average 11 assists for his career. He's gonna make some of the craziest, dopest passes of all time, and they were still winning. So I don't know if that really matters, but hey, I gotta talk about shit, y'all. I gotta start up an argument. It wouldn't be fun if I did. But let me know. Is Magic still the greatest point guard of all time? Or is Steph kind of, taking that title? Because he got 4 now. He got 4. And that finals MVP.
Celtics and Lakers dropped way back and dared the handler
They just
to
want
take
Magic
that.
to shoot
Because
that.
no offensive player had any interest in keeping the defense honest by taking a pull-up three, the strategy was an effective way to double-team the post. It created a cat-and-mouse game where the offense would awkwardly try to feed the post while the player guarding the ball was trying to be in two places at once. Sometimes that cat-and-mouse game would result in the post player and ball handler just passing the ball back and forth to each other multiple times. Obviously, the worse the shooter, the farther back the defender would go away from the ball. But even a sharpshooter like Larry Bird was given space when he had the ball. It's pretty jarring to see no pressure being applied to the ball and everyone being dared to shoot. It also directly contrasts the ideas that the hand-checking rules in the 80s and 90s made it more difficult to score back then. In the 85 finals, it didn't really matter what the rules were at all. The player guarding the ball was positioned too far back to hand-check even if he wanted to. Of course, there's a reason they play defense like that. Guarding dominant post players like Kareem and McHale wasn't easy. Kareem started the game 7 for 7 and had 5 skyhooks. Given how crowded the paint was during Kareem's career, it kind of makes sense that he developed a signature shot that was nearly unblockable no matter where defenders were positioned. Meanwhile,
bro, that shot is so tough, but something I talked about in the first video, I don't know if anybody responded to it. I haven't got a chance to look at the comments, but there was people shooting that sky hook back in the 50s. And I always thought that Kareem was the one who invented it. But I don't think that was the case. That wasn't the case. They said that mostly all the bigs in the 50s and 60s was shooting the sky hook. Well, not even the sky hook, but the jump hook. Like I said, I think Kareem might have made it more of a sky hook type thing to where they made it a signature. But, I mean, it didn't look too far off. So I just want to know, why is Kareem kind of getting the credit for inventing it, when in all those videos, it was all a bunch of bigs doing that sky hook? Let me know. Let me know in the comments, man.
McHale had even better numbers. He finished with 32 points and 16 rebounds despite the double teams, but it was the Lakers that went on to win the title. Moving on now to the 1998
The
finals.
90s.
The three-point line's now a little bit more prevalent. Michael Jordan started out Game 6 by hitting 3 threes in just the first half. Here, Dennis Rodman screens for the MJ three-pointer while Tony Kukoc is coming off of an empty ball screen.
Okay,
And on
Jordan.
this one, the Bulls go to their split action out of the triangle offense. It actually wasn't the only time they hit a three off of the split. Kukoc hit a big one in the fourth quarter. The Jazz even hit a pull-up three in transition. With no one picking up the ball, Jeff Hornacek let it fly from downtown. All that being said, there were still only 6 combined three-pointers made by the two teams. Nowhere near the amounts we see nowadays.
Still, only in 1998, it was still only 6 threes made in the whole game. And I think they just showed all 6 of them. They definitely just showed what? Jordan had 3, Tony Kukoc had 1, Hornacek had 1. I think it might have been 1 more. That was all 6 of them right there. So even still in the late 90s, teams wasn't really shooting threes. So is it safe to say that the 3-point shot has become really popular like right now? Like it's more popular now than it's ever been. Like we kind of witnessing teams just literally focus just on 3-point shots. So I want to see how it's gonna be once we get to the 2020 games.
And when guarding the ball, the pickup points were still very low like we saw in the 80s. Here, John Stockton has the ball. He was a very respectable 38% three-point shooter for his career.
This wasn't a
but the
priority.
Bulls still sag off of him and dare him to shoot regardless, with Stockton showing no real interest in pulling the trigger. Besides from his three-point shooting, Michael Jordan did his best work in the post. He nailed a fadeaway jumper over his left shoulder, buried another fadeaway over his right shoulder, and he also faked a fadeaway, getting his man off balance for a beautiful step-through move to the basket.
Oh my God, I'm about to rewind that because those were 3 different moves, bro. All out the post. 3 different ways. He went to the left shoulder one time, right shoulder the other time, pump fake to the layup on the other one. Like, that's tough, man. That's tough. And I think this kind of just explains why the game was so rugged and so tough back in the day. Because when you don't really focus on threes, it's all about getting to the hole, getting layups, trying to get there as best as you can. While hand checking is a thing and 3-pointers aren't really that popular, it's going to get tough in there. I get it why it was so tough, but let's watch these Jordan buckets again, man. These was nasty, yo.
Interest in pulling the trigger.
These was so nasty.
Besides from his three-point shooting, Michael Jordan did his best work in the post.
See where Kobe
He
get it
nailed a
from.
fadeaway jumper over his left shoulder, buried another fadeaway over his right
Then
shoulder,
the pump
and he
fake right
also
here.
faked the fadeaway, getting his man off balance for a beautiful
Oh my
step-through
God,
move to
that's
the basket.
tough,
The
man.
game was really a battle between Michael Jordan isolating in the mid-range area and Karl Malone isolating in the low post. That's partially because of how dominant Jordan and Malone were on the offensive end. It made sense to let them isolate,
That's
but it
tough.
was also partially thanks to the rule book at the time. Let me explain to you the illegal defense rules of the 1990s.
Before you explain that, where does Karl Malone rank as far as all-time bigs? I want to kind of combine the centers and the power forwards. So all time, is Karl Malone a top 5 big of all time or a top 10? Let me know in the comments.
The truth is, the rules aren't easy to explain. A headline from the Deseret News in 1998 read, "Illegal defense rule is as confusing as new tax laws and full of nearly as many loopholes." The article estimated that 80% of NBA fans had no idea what it was, and that even TV broadcasters were afraid to talk about it because they didn't entirely understand the rules. The basic essence of the rules was that defenders weren't allowed to play zone. They either had to stick to guarding their man or do the complete opposite and fully commit to double teaming. Anything in between, like shading towards the player with the ball but not completely leaving your man, was illegal. So in response to the rules, offenses would clear out a side and give their star players the freedom to isolate. There were some exceptions to illegal defense. Let's say the ball is out on the wing and a player is trying to post up on the block. If a weak side offensive player was located above the foul line, the weak side defender wasn't allowed to help in the post.
What?
But if a weak side offensive player was located below the foul line, the weak side defender was allowed to help in the post, even if the post player didn't have the ball. For the Jazz, that post player was Karl Malone, and of course the Bulls wanted to give help on it. So in response, the Jazz would space their offense like this, leaving the corner completely empty and positioning all three players above the foul line.
Go help,
in
Scotty.
today's NBA, this would be pretty dumb. The lowest defender would give help, and then the two other defenders would zone up on the weak side. Because the offensive players are so close to each other, it would be an easy cover. But that was illegal defense in 1998. In fact, the Bulls got called for 4 illegal defenses in just the first half. 3 of them were because of that Jazz 3-man alignment. The illegal defense rules of the 90s fundamentally changed how the game was played. Offenses would try to game the system by strategically placing players on the weak side above the foul line. And defenses would do their best to adapt while staying within the rules. It all led to a lot of isolation and standing around on offense.
That's so stupid. That's stupid. I feel like that kind of... They say that kind of makes it easier for the offense right there, because why would they not be able to help? I guess it's because the three-point line wasn't that big of a deal back then, so they thought that the defense was kind of getting too much of an advantage. But in today's game, it's like, you can do that if you want to, and we're going to throw this joint right over here to that three-point shooter, and he's going to shoot y'all lights out. So that's kind of crazy for real. Like, I never knew this rule was a thing back then.
And in my opinion, it limited creativity. The Jazz ran the same plays with the same spacing over and over again in the finals to isolate Karl Malone. Eventually in 2001, the illegal defense rules would be legislated out of the NBA, which brings us to the next decade. Before we get into the 2004 finals, let's take a minute to get our bearings for where we are in NBA history.
And that's where we're going to end this video at. I'm not that excited on watching this because the Lakers lost and we kind of struggled in this finals, but it is what it is. It's gonna be a good video. They're gonna be explaining, the offenses between both teams. So we're gonna get into it. But I appreciate y'all for watching this video. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel if y'all haven't already. I think these 3-part videos are gonna be really good, and it's gonna explain how NBA has transformed to the way it is today. Make sure y'all like this video. If y'all like this video, you go ahead and write something in the comments. But I appreciate y'all like always. We out.